So Dr. Nath and I connected on the Facebook actually. So we thought that we should do a program for the people of Maldives as well. Uh, and of course, uh, all thanks to both of you, Dr. Temple and Dr. Stephen, that we are able to do multiple programs. We have done now a program for Nepal as well as for Sri Lanka, as well as one for UK. I'm just trying to make sure that the Facebook thing goes.
Facebook. Watch party have a Thank you for giving this time for us. I mean,
good to
we
be here. I
really
want to see these kids get out and do things.
It's our pleasure.
It has been a journey for me in the Maldives. I'm the first clinical psychologist who came and
Connected on the.
Wait a minute, something's wrong with Dr. Naz's sound.
Yeah, there's a double sound coming.
Well, you have to turn one of your speakers off. That it's going back through a speaker, and it'll make that reverberation.
Are you able to hear me okay now?
That was because of me, the double sound.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can hear you.
I was trying to do something. Yeah. Okay, please go ahead. Dr. Naz, you.
Yeah, that happens if your speaker, is transmitting your voice right after you say it, then it goes back to the microphone. And we had one of those happen yesterday on a conference, and they just turned something off, and then it was fine.
I hope I am. Is okay now?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a great pleasure to meet both of you. I'm privileged to interact, and many people in the Maldives have messaged me saying that this is such a good opportunity for them to have you speak to them and to answer their questions. Thank you so much for that.
No, it's going to be good.
The first person, as I know, was diagnosed in Maldives, I think in 2000, because mental health in the Maldives is a relatively new thing, understanding mental health issues. But today there is a lot of awareness about autism, and people are really excited about learning more.
Well, the thing that's really important that we're going to have to really stress, if you have little children that are not talking at 2 and 3 years old, you must do something and work with them now. That's one of the most important things. And you cannot let them just play with electronics all day.
Okay, don't have.
Dr. Nath, I will open the session. Maybe introduce Dr. Temple and Dr. Stephen, and then also ask you to kind of do tell us something about your MIPSTAR, your organization.
Yes.
Yeah. So. I think we do have 4 more minutes to go, isn't it?
Yeah, we're here early.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have started, going for the live so that we are ready. I can see there are five people more who are viewing the program live, and this program is now on your Maldives page as well already. I can.
We are just going on the page.
Yes, please. It is on your page, and with a caption saying that MIPSTAR and Soch are doing a program with Dr. Temple Grandin and Dr. Stephen Shore. So you can actually share the program even more. So go to the share option in that same post. In fact, I have posted there. So you can go to the share option. It will give you a link, and that link can be posted to other Facebook groups or even to WhatsApp groups also.
Yes, we would be doing that. We will be having simultaneous watch parties as well.
Oh, okay. Great,
Yeah.
great. That's great.
Unfortunately, it happens at the prayer time, so otherwise you would have had a bigger crowd. But however, I'm sure people still will be watching us.
And also the great thing about FB Lives is that the program is always there. So you can actually watch it later or any point of time.
Yes.
Program is going to be there.
Which page?
What's that noise in the background?
I think, Dr. Naz, is there a sound in the background? Just
Yeah, it's like
No.
wind noise.
It's like wind. It won't, there's no wind here. It's not coming from me.
Yeah, not me either.
Not really. There is no wind here either.
not sure, really.
Static sound.
Baby, there is something.
Still have 2 minutes, so we have 9 minutes.
Nas page avistacci.
It seems to come and go. It seems to stop and then
Come and
start.
go.
Yeah, it's intermittent.
It's very silent over here. I do not understand. No,
But Stephen's hearing it. I'm hearing it.
Sound
Sounds like radio static.
Yeah, here it's back.
I just went on mute and I realized that the sound was still there. So yeah, I mean, Dr. Naz, you can mute yourself and let's see if the sound goes away.
Right.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, there's something in Dr. Naz's system. Yeah, if she just stay muted except when she's talking, that will fix it.
Correct.
That's the way to, yeah.
How
And
is
then
it
it came back
now?
as soon as you unmute.
It's in the system or somewhere, because when you go on mute, it immediately all the sounds stop.
How
So
is
then
it
you
now?
want-
It is there. It is there now intermittently, but when you go on mute, it is absolutely pin drop silence. So I mean,
Oh,
only thing that we can do is whenever you are talking, you go on mute and then you can mute yourself.
Well, the thing is, as long as when you need to talk, just go off mute, but when you're not talking, then it fixes it.
just
So
give
there's
me a
some
minute.
kind
I
of
will just
feedback.
do something about it. Yeah.
The phone is
Now
still
it's
there.
starting up again. Yeah, it has something to do with the connection.
Connect with the baby.
Like a faraway jet plane a little bit.
I will do something about that. I will just try to
No,
correct that.
So it's 7:30. Let me start anyhow, and whenever I'll invite Dr. Naz you also to do some. Yeah. Good evening, everyone, and we are here one more time with our esteemed guests, none other than Dr. Temple Grandin and Dr. Stephen Shore. Dr. Temple Grandin and Dr. Stephen Shore do not need any introduction. They are the most honorable, most respectable people in the field of autism and developmental difficulties. But among them is years of experience, experience of living with autism. They have books that they have published. Dr. Temple has a Hollywood movie that and captures the entire story. So there's a huge amount of awareness, there's a huge amount of inputs and insights that we look forward to get from both of them. And we are so pleased and so thankful to both of them to be available, to be so approachable every time we do a program, maybe for Nepal, for Sri Lanka, for Bangladesh, for UK, and now for Maldives, that they have always welcomed such programs with open arms. So I welcome both of you, and I would again like to share that we are so happy to be with you one more time. Today, as a host, as a moderator, as a local liaison, we have Dr. Naz, who is from Maldives Institute for Psychological Services. I welcome you, Dr. Naz, and I would like to start with you to tell us something about MIPSTAR, as your institute is called, and also maybe open the session. Dr. Naz.
Thank you, Dr. Manish, for that invitation. MIPSTAR is a mental health organization. We are doing psychological services we provide throughout the Maldives. We are one of the first organizations providing this service in the country. We have traveled across the country. We keep, we diagnose, we provide interventions. We work with children with autism spectrum disorders and with other mental health conditions as well. Yeah, it is definitely a privilege to be on this forum with you and as a moderator. Thank you, Dr. Manish, and thank you, Professor Temple Grandin and Stephen Shaw. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for a very brief, very crisp introduction. So let's start with our session. There has been some list of questions that we have collected in advance, and there can be questions that can come on the FB live as well. So Dr. Temple, to start with, there's a question about alternative and augmentative communication. And the question is about what is your take on it? How useful, beneficial?
Okay, maybe I'll start. I'm just going to tell a little bit about myself. I had no speech until age 4, all the classic symptoms of autism. And when I was 2.5, I went into a really intensive, really good speech therapy program. I cannot emphasize enough the importance, early education, the little 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and 4-year-olds that are not talking. Do not wait. Work with them now. And a good way to engage these children is to play a lot of little turn-taking games. If the child's spinning something, turn it into a turn-taking game. And then just start, teaching them words. Now, it's really important to have a way to communicate. Okay, this brings up the issue of augmentative communication. I can remember having big meltdowns and temper tantrums because I was very frustrated. I couldn't tell people what I wanted. And now if language comes in right away, then you probably don't need it. But you have a child now 4 or 5 years old and has got no language. You got to give him another way to communicate. And it can be something simple, like a piece of cardboard with pictures on it, something very simple like that, or maybe some sign language signs, but something to give them a way to communicate. Now, we have the issue of services. There's many parts of the world where there's no services. What you need to do is get some grandmothers in the neighborhood to work with this child. And you're going to find that some of these older grannies who have worked with a lot of little kids will have the ability as teachers to help, work with this child. But they need 2 or 3 hours a day of one-to-one teaching by an effective teacher who gets more language and also more skills, dressing, bathing, basic skills. Okay, Steve,
Yes.
Yes, yes, please.
Yes. So I'll be glad to continue. I cannot reiterate strongly enough what Temple says regarding the need for communication. After 18 months of typical development, I was struck with the regressive autism bomb. And like what happens to about 30% of us, I lost functional communication, had meltdowns, and withdrew from the environment. So I became completely non-speaking. And that was a very frustrating time. As Temple said, there were a lot of meltdowns, there were a lot of tantrums because I was unable to communicate. So what that suggests is that the most important thing we can do is provide a reliable means of communication, whatever that is. So if it's sign language, if it's pointing at pictures, Maya Johnson pictures, for example, if it's typing on an iPad or some other tablet, however it is, we need to provide that reliable means of communication first. There is a myth that if we teach a child an alternative means of communication, that they will become lazy and they won't bother to learn how to speak. However, research shows the contrary, and that is if speech is going to occur, it's going to come faster if we give the child an understanding of what language is in the first place. If for some reason neurologically they're not going to be able to speak, then at least we've provided that reliable means of communication. So I am in full support of any means of reliable and valid communication.
Sure. Dr. Temple, would you like to add something about the alternative augmentative?
Well, I think it's just essential. I want to add there are two different ways language can be affected in autism. Stephen had language and then lost it. I was a little different type where I did not have full language until I was 4 years old. And then my language came in slowly. There's two types of speech delay, but you still treat them the same way. I cannot emphasize enough. Little kids that are not talking, you've got to work with them. Do not just let them sit in a corner and watch computers or phones or TV. People have got to work with them and work with them right away. And I have a book called The Way I See It, my most basic book on autism, The Way I See It. It is available in an electronic format and in paper format. And it's a lot of little short chapters that would help parents. But those moms have got to get some help. You know, go to your mosque, go to your community and get some older grandmothers that have had a lot of experience with children to work with these little kids. You have to work with them. You know, do not wait 2 years for services.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have another question asking about nonverbal children, and this is about how can parents establish routines and modify or modulate behavior changes for especially for nonverbal autistic children.
This is the older kids now that remain nonverbal.
So yeah.
They have to have a way to communicate, and some of the nonverbals can learn to type independently on a tablet. And a tablet works better because the keyboard on the tablet and the print appear close together. That makes it a whole lot easier. Also, if you're teaching a child to talk, speak slowly. Always encourage the child to use the language. You also have to give them time to respond. These kids are like a slow internet connection, trying to bring up a web page. Give them time to respond. It might be 10 seconds. That's a long time. So slow down when you talk, because when grown-ups talk fast, it will sound like, but when they talked slowly, then I was able to understand.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, it's important to minimize the number of words, because what Temple was experiencing, part of what Temple experienced is that when people talk, they use many, many words, many extra words. And most of us have the processing power to understand that and to work with it. For the autistic person who may have difficulty with processing language, minimize the number of words and certainly make sure that sufficient processing time is given. Sometimes you have to have silence and just wait, because if you ask the question a second time, what that causes is the autistic person it reboots the memory is essentially what it is. So they're starting over from the beginning. So give that gift of time.
Well, it's just like the computer was slow. For some reason, my computer this morning was a little bit slow. I think it was trying to update something. And you have to just wait for the slow connection. And that's the way these kids' brains are. But on the other hand, there are many autistic individuals where they have skills that a lot of normal people don't have, maybe in art, in music, in building things, in computer science, in mathematics. Because if I was a computer, I'd be the old Intel 286. That's the very first personal computer for a processor. But I have a huge amount of memory. And I'm a visual thinker. So I'm seeing this big warehouse full of computers. That would be my memory. And so there's a lot of really good jobs that you can do with tremendous memory. I use that in my design work.
And what Temple is getting at is the characteristics that's not often talked about in autism, and that is we tend to have a very widely varying skill set. And what that translates to is that the things we're good at, we can be incredibly good at, perhaps even best in the region or even the world. But at the same time, there are going to be significant challenges that come with being autistic. And these areas often need a lot of support. So for example, I know of a doctoral student who has amazing verbal skills, amazing ability to process information and to write papers and to give presentations. But at the same time, she is so challenged with mathematics that she has learned a long time ago not to carry a checkbook. She has to see. For something to be in her mind, she has to see it. So while she intellectually understands money moving around in bank accounts, somehow it just doesn't work for her. And she has to be on a cash basis only.
Great.
Well, the other thing that I want to talk about, when children get to be like 8 or 9 years old, you'll often start to see an area where they might have a skill. Art was my skill. I also loved to build things and make things. I'd spend hours experimenting with little airplanes and kites that I had made. And you want to take that skill and expand it, because I was just drawing a single horse head over and over again. You want to expand it and be doing other things. Or a child might like cars. Well, then let's teach math with cars. But I'm a visual thinker. I think in pictures. Another person on the spectrum may be the mathematical thinker. You see, there's like 3 different kinds of thought. There's picture thinking like me, and I've discussed that in my book, Thinking in Pictures. I've discussed that. It's also discussed in the Way I See It book. Then you have your pattern thinker, your more mathematical thinker. And then you have verbal word thinkers who think completely in words. And there's actually scientific evidence now for the different kinds of thought. And that's covered in another one of my books, The Autistic Brain. I cover the science that these different specialized thinking actually do exist. And there's been even more research on this since The Autistic Brain has been published. Now, most so-called normal people are mixtures, but the autistic person tends to be an extreme, really good at one thing and really bad at something else. And we need to build up in the area where they're good at. And it's something they can turn into a career.
Yeah, that's right. So for example, at age 4, my parents noticed me taking apart watches with a sharp knife. So I'd pop open the back of that watch, I'd take out the motor, I'd remove some of the gears, I'd spin them around and then put it all back together again. And my parents, upon noticing this, soon provided all kinds of other devices to take apart and to put, and they made sure I got them back together again. So it could be clocks, radios, other electrical equipment, mechanical equipment. So as Temple so often talks about, it's important to stretch that autistic person. So Temple talked about drawing horse heads, and that is a great launch pad, because then her mother said, well, why don't you draw the entire horse? And why don't you expand that to drawing the stable as well? And similarly, my parents took this interest in taking apart watches to taking apart and putting together other objects, which eventually led into bicycle repair, which was a great way for me to earn money all the way through college.
That was wonderful, Dr. Temple and Dr. Stephen. Having heard that answer, it reminds me of a question that a lot of parents always ask: how can we make children do better? Children with autism do better in a school or in a classroom. What can we use as a strategy?
Well, you have to look at where the problem is. Sometimes there's sensory sensitivity problems, especially if the classroom is noisy. And maybe the child screams when there's a bell. Some schools have a bell that tell you when it's time to switch classes. And when I was about 9 years old, that hurt my ears, or like a dentist drill hitting a nerve. And sensory issues are real. They also are very variable. Now, you sometimes can desensitize that if you were to let the child after hours ring the bell, or maybe they're afraid of the hairdryer because that makes a loud noise. And you'd let the child turn the hairdryer on and off, or some other thing that makes a lot of noise. When they initiate the sound, you can sometimes learn to tolerate it. There's also problems with certain kinds of lighting. We've got a new LED lights now, and for some individuals, not everybody, this is not a problem for me, these lights flicker. And it's like a strobe light flashing on and off. And there's so many new electronic lights that, I can't just tell you which ones are bad. I do know there's a special light for chicken houses. It's LED. Absolutely does not flicker. I don't know if you can get them where you're at, but if you're not able to change the lights, then if it's really bright and you have windows, then turn them off and put that child's desk over by the window. Or if you have to have the lights on, put that desk at the window. Wearing a hat, like what Steve's wearing right now, can also sometimes help. Those are some simple things, but these sensory issues really are real. There's problems in the sensory system where it overreacts.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I'm wearing this hat, because for me, being under recessed lighting fixtures, so lights that hang down from the ceiling and shine down, especially when you can see the light bulb, for me, it's probably like looking into a spotlight for most other people. So here is the accommodation. And it might be that you have to let a student wear a hat in school in order, as an accommodation, even if there's a general rule that hats are not allowed in school. So sensory issues are very important insofar as teaching, clarity in teaching, providing visual supports. Many of us are visual, as Temple has mentioned, I think even most of us, but not all of us. So what we need to do is have teachers provide different ways of learning subjects. So some I learn by doing. Some students may be more kinesthetic in nature. This is a person who says, I have to do it in order to learn. Others will say, I have to see it in order to learn. And yet others may say, I have to hear it in order to learn. So autistic people have the same differences in learning style as everybody else, except the difference is we tend to be more to an extreme. So those of us who are visual, like Temple, are extremely visual, often to the expense of perhaps other modalities. Those of us who are auditory, and I do know some auditory autistic people, they're amazing in their auditory skills, retention skills, but their other skills aren't really usable. So that's that extremely widely varying skill set that we were talking about a little bit earlier.
Well, the other thing we need to be doing is
And I see that, there we go.
oh, sorry, okay.
No, go ahead, Tom.
We need to build up on where the child is good at. Because sometimes extreme mathematics skills will show up. And I have seen cases where they gave the child mathematics books, like an algebra book or a geometry book, and the child went to high school or even college level math. Now, that's not me, but because I'm the picture thinker. But another child, and even there've been some nonverbal cases, I suggested to a family to give an algebra book to a nonverbal individual, and he just went right through it and did it. He was a math genius. And you need to develop the strength. And if you don't expose them to that book, I was exposed to increased art materials and art assignments, then you have to develop these abilities. And the other thing that mathematics kids expose them to computer programming. And you can find that free online. I tried computer programming, I could not do it, but another child would do it. And a lot of kids today aren't getting exposed to enough different things to find out what to be really good at.
Sure. Yes, of course. So another related question, which you have touched upon a little, but this question is about sensory again, specifically, and it's about sensory relating to taste and touch that a parent has asked. And they have said that, how can parents who do not have a psychology background can work with these kind of sensory issues or difficulties?
Well, I think one of the things you can do with the taste things, and they're picky about what they'll eat, get the child involved in making the food. And then he's allowed to play in it, handle it. Sometimes that can help. Touch sensitivity can be a big problem. There's a therapy called environmental enrichment. It's a paper. You might want to get this paper. Environmental enrichment is an effective treatment for autism. And so you use 3 keywords to find it on Google. Autism, environmental enrichment. And what you do is you stimulate 2 senses at the same time. Like you might touch a cold water glass and smell, a peppermint aromatherapy, something like that. And some kids, they're so sensitive that when they go to dry themselves after bathing, it's almost painful. Well, give them choices of different towels. Maybe use t-shirt for a towel because it's softer. And try different things. Also, deep pressure can help desensitize. And you may have heard about my squeezing machine. Couldn't stand to be touched. And deep pressure is sometimes very helpful. Weighted vests, weighted blankets help the child sleep. Maybe Stephen's got some things to say about that, or maybe Dr. Naz has got some things to say.
Yeah, well, certainly sensory issues is a major part of autism. And we so often hear about hypersensitivities, as Temple mentioned. So for example, my hypersensitivities include clothing. You might notice that I wear very loose clothing because wearing tight clothing just overwhelms me with sensation. But given the variability and diversity that we see in the autism spectrum, there'll be others on the spectrum who crave tight clothing.
Yeah.
Now that said, like Temple, I crave deep pressure, but not for my clothing. So it can be very variable.
Well, and it's the other thing I find is I get a lot of allergies. So all new clothing always that goes against my skin, I wash it, especially underwear. And if it's brand new, I wash it before I wear it.
Oh,
And
yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
And get their stuff sizing they put in it when they make the fabric, and I've got to get that out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for those informative answers. Really, they are very something that any parent can start doing right from the word go, right from tomorrow. I'd like to hand over to Dr. Naz, and she has few questions that she would have collected from few of her groups and other people who were sent the information. Dr. Naz, please do ask your question.
Oh, you got to unmute.
Dr. Naz is on mute, so we can't hear her.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you very much for that. I'm sure a lot of our parents will benefit from those tips which you gave. I mean, it's very exciting to hear all these, things. For us, it is new knowledge for many of our parents. But if they must be hearing this for the first time from experts like you. One of the questions which I have been given by some of the parents, some of the registrants are like, will there be an updated version of Ask and Tell?
Updated version of what? I didn't get that.
Yes, Ask and Tell is my self-advocacy book,
Yes.
written for and by autistic individuals. And as you speak, I am in discussions with my publisher to plan an updated version. There'll be people have contributed the book. Some of them will be updating their contributions, and we'll also have new contributors for Ask and Tell. So yes, Ask and Tell is on its way to being updated.
Well, and in my book, Thinking in Pictures, I've just done a new afterword in it that goes through some of the latest things with teaching, sensory, way people think, and that just came out. This book was updated 2 years ago, so this is recent information.
Okay. That will be good resources for us. And one more question is, will these self-advocacy resources be relevant to our times, and will it show the difference between the urban and rural resources? Like for us in the Maldives, the capital city, the resources are different, and from in the other islands. So would there be a way these books could guide people especially when there are no therapists, just very basic material they have, how they could.
Yes,
these books will be really helpful. And then we just have to find things in the community. I think rural areas, more farming things, children get really interested in that. Then another thing that I'm really concerned about is employment. And there's often a lot of little shops, like Stephen fixed bicycles, little shops that fix things that, 11, 12-year-olds, teenagers can start to work in and learn work skills. Like my kind of mind would be very good at fixing motorbikes. And that's a skill that people appreciate and need. But they've got to get exposed to that, and you do it carefully and safely. Little kids like mechanical things. I watched a 3-year-old yesterday learn how a drain off a roof worked, and the water would come out the other end, and went underneath the sidewalk. And the little kid was looking at each end, see how the water came out. He was already understanding that.
so that exposure piece is really, really important. Because you never know what somebody might be interested in or good at, or what might suddenly catch a person's eye and interest unless you expose them. So if my parents had not exposed me to other objects to disassemble and reassemble, maybe I'd still be stuck with watches and not bicycles.
I want to bring up another thing. When I was 8, I was not able to read. So I want to bring up different methods of reading. And you can learn with sight words. That's what my school is using. For me, that did not work. So they taught me how to sound out my words with phonics. And then we got a book that I was interested in, interesting book. And mother would read it out loud, stop in a really exciting part, and then have me sound out a few words. So when it comes to reading, try different methods. It's going to be a different method for different kids. Phonics worked for me. Another child may learn with sight words. And I very quickly went from no reading to 4 grades ahead in reading when they used the method that my mind worked with.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you. The second question which I have is like, we see that some of the children, they are self-harming and they indulge in violent behaviors. So what could the parent do? What could the primary caretakers, how could they handle that situation to minimize the harm that may come?
All right, what age of child are they talking about here? The age?
A child with autism spectrum
What
disorder.
age?
Yes.
How old? How old?
It could vary from 4 years to 12 years between this.
Well,
group.
I'm gonna I think how you're gonna handle it may be a little bit different in a 4-year-old than maybe a teenager. And when I was 4 years old and I had a tantrum, mother would just put me in my room and let me calm down. And when I was a little bit older, they'd put me in my room and I'd calm down. And there was always a penalty. No television for one night. Very calmly. And if the teacher called home that I had thrown a temper tantrum at school, mother would say, your teacher called that you were kicking and screaming on the floor of the classroom. You know the rule, no television tonight. You know, and that just very calmly applied. You have to figure out what's causing the meltdown. Is it sensory? Or is it the other thing you always have to check in a nonverbal individual is a painful hidden medical problem. Toothache, earache, tummy ache, acid reflux is a really big one. And then there's the issue of frustration with communication. Have to make sure they have a way to communicate. Really, really important. We have to figure out what's causing the behavior.
That's right. The cause is so important because you cannot hope to modify the behavior. Say, for example, a child is having meltdowns and engaging in self-harming behavior because they're having digestive problems and their stomach hurts and there's terrible pain. Until you figure out that medical issue, then you're not going to be able to modify the behavior. And similarly with a sensory situation, if you have a child who is hypersensitive to fluorescent lights, and for them it's like being in a room with a strobe light, there's nothing you can do until you fix that issue. And sometimes you have to be a bit of a detective. And if you're wondering if it's the lighting, for example, well, let's try it with the lights off or with a different type of lighting. And in that way, once you figure out the cause, then you can work on modifying the behavior. And you also have to be very clear, as Temple said, well, if you behave this way, then you're not going to be able to watch TV for the next 2 days or whatever the consequence might be.
Well, they only took it, I was a young child then, so they only took it away for one night because 2 weeks is like forever for a little child. So it was always
Right.
one night, but I had my favorite TV show. And I knew that if I had a temper tantrum, I would not be able to watch it that night.
I think parents are also asking, especially in the middle of a temper tantrum, would it be better for the parents to ignore the child or to restrain the child? I think that's the query that's coming.
Mother
the
would just
important thing,
put me in my room. Put me in my room. That's what she'd do with me. Then when I was all calm, 20 minutes later, she said, you know the rule. There'll be no television tonight.
Thank you for that. And another question for Professor Temple. Can you tell a bit about the squeeze machine that you invented and how it helps?
Okay. When I got into, as a teenager, I started having anxiety attacks from the hormones, puberty. And I watched cattle out on a farm go in a device to hold them for their vaccinations. A lot of the cattle in the US are really wild because the West is really big in the US. They seldom see people. And I noticed that some of the cattle had just sort of relaxed. So I went and tried the cattle squeezer. And then I built one for myself. There's pictures of it in my book, Thinking in Pictures. And that deep pressure helped calm down my anxiety. Now, I want to emphasize there's other cheaper things you can do, easier things to do, like a weighted blanket, weighted vest. You can make those. But for certain individuals, deep pressure is calming. Now, it does not work for everybody, but it works for the kid that tends to seek deep pressure. And as Stephen was saying, he likes loose clothes. There's other children that like tight clothes, so these things are very variable. And then the other thing for me, my anxiety got worse as I went through young adulthood in my 20s. And I described that in Thinking in Pictures. And when I got into my early 30s, I went on a low dose of antidepressant medication for the anxiety. And I've been on it for 40 years. And way too many drugs are given out to little kids. Way too many drugs. But there is a place for careful use of medication, especially in older teenagers and adults, and in both the way I see it and in Thinking in Pictures. I discussed this, and what the medicine did is it stopped the constant anxiety. But I want to emphasize the right medication, and I'd strongly recommend reading that chapter in the book. And I'm not just trying to sell the book. I think it's better to read the whole chapter, and where I explain, my own personal experience with it.
It's important to realize that there is no medicine to cure autism. That does not exist. There's no potion, there's no supplement, nothing to cure autism. However, given that, for example, with Temple, anxiety can be a characteristic that comes with many on the autism spectrum, the judicious use of a medication can be helpful if it's administered by a competent and qualified medical professional. So
Well,
you need
that
to
sometimes is difficult to find.
yeah, it can be.
And the thing is, the big mistake that's made with antidepressants, and antidepressants, when used right, very effective for anxiety. The big mistake made, and doctors make this mistake all the time, is too high a dose. Like sometimes a little bit of Prozac or fluoxetine will work. And if you take too high a dose, you're going to get agitation and insomnia. You will not be able to sleep. And I only take a starter dose. I only take a beginner dose. It's all I've taken for 40 years. And it's made a very big difference. And especially when it's medical information, I'd rather have you read it in Thinking in Pictures than my other book, The Way I See It. You can take those chapters and copy them, the medical chapters, all you want, translate them, whatever. And the chapter in Thinking in Pictures is called A Believer in Biochemistry. And then there's about 3 chapters in The Way I See It book on medications. But I'd rather have you read the information so I know that you're getting it absolutely correct.
We also find that children who are diagnosed with autism has other comorbidities such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder as well. So how do we go about managing that?
Well, autism and ADHD have 30% crossover in clinical symptoms, genetics, and in brain scans. They cross over, and in The Way I See It, I have got those studies referenced. That was some of the new information I added in that book. And I think sometimes we get too hung up on the diagnosis, and we need to be doing more on how do we help this kid to function. Maybe Stephen's got something to say.
Yeah, well, exactly as Temple said, there is a good amount of overlap between ADHD and autism. Both of them involve differences in attention, which is sometimes why it's difficult to separate the two. So really, what it means is that we need to focus on what the child needs without getting too hung up on the labels, but provide for what they need.
Yeah, thank you about that. Another question that is come is, what can parents do? You know, sometimes when given a diagnosis or when they see the symptoms of autism in a child, parents refuse to accept that their child has autism. In that case, how can we go about talking to the parent? What is it that we can do so that the parent will come on board and try to help the child faster? You know, there could be an early intervention. A lot of parents are going to deny.
The most important thing is to provide support as soon as possible. There is a lot of hope for autistic people. However, it requires recognizing and understanding that a child, if they're autistic, there are tools, there are techniques, there are strategies, some of them which we've already talked about, which can be a great help for supporting autistic people to lead fulfilling and productive lives. So both with Temple and myself, if our parents had denied we are autistic and said, no, that can't be right, and just left us in the corner, which is the worst thing you could do, to leave the child alone, then neither of us would be doing what we're doing. Instead, our parents both realized that a lot of work would need to be done if we were to lead fulfilling and productive lives.
What were the challenges? I think these questions go to both of you, Professor Stephen and Professor Temple. Grandin, what are the challenges that you continue to face as autistic adults? What support helped you in your achievements? What can you say so that some of our parents could be motivated and inspired by your journey?
Well, I am a college professor, a university professor. I've been one for 31 years. And I've also designed a lot of equipment for the meat industry. It's used all around the world. So from a career standpoint, I think I've done really well. And I'm lucky that I've got a good job with health insurance. I'm really pleased about that. And I'm also want to work on getting individuals into the workplace. We're using a technology right now where some of the people that probably invented this technology probably have mild autism. I have been to the tech companies, and some of those programmers I'm sure are autistic that make computer programs. You see, autism is a continuous trait that goes from just slightly socially awkward and smart to somebody who's nonverbal who cannot dress themselves. It's a very, very big spectrum. And you know, this makes, especially when people get older, and then there are some older people with autism that, you know, that need support.
And I know for me, like with Temple, I'm very proud at what I've been able to do in terms of also being a college professor for several years. And I travel around the world doing workshops on autism. Before the pandemic struck, I was visiting a different country about once a month. I've been to India, I think, a dozen times, and I've been to 51 countries in total, talking and presenting about autism. But that said, there are still challenges that autism presents to me today. There's certainly sensory issues, which is why I wear my hat. Many people think that this hat's a fashion statement, and I guess in some ways it is, and it's always good to support my university as well. But as we talked about earlier, it's really an accommodation for recessed lighting fixtures. As a professor, it takes me a long time to recognize my students. Part of autism involves difficulty in facial recognition, and it takes me all semester to recognize so what I tell my students is that I'm really bad at remembering faces. And if you want to talk to me outside of class, it will be helpful if you reintroduce yourself to me outside of class. And that's one benefit of using Zoom. And software like Zoom is that every person has their name underneath their face. And the same for conferences as well.
I hope in the future it will be not 51 countries, but 52 countries that you will add Maldives to your list of countries that you will visit.
I'd like to make some comments about how to adapt during the pandemic. I went an entire year without flying on an airplane. All my travel was stopped, and I started doing classes online and everything. And I found that what helped me is to get up in the morning, get dressed for work every day by 7 o'clock in the morning, dressed, showered, and dressed for work. No lounging around in sleepwear. And I find when I get out of that shower and I feel a whole lot better, and then have a schedule. Try to get some writing done in the morning. Been working on a new book. I've been doing a lot of writing projects. Some of our research we've been able to do, some of our research got canceled, but having a schedule. And it's the same thing they learned with the astronauts on the space station, is that they're living in close quarters. They had a lot of problems when they first started space stations. And NASA learned, and so did the other space agencies around the world, a schedule to get them up in the morning. They have their chores, their science, and their maintenance. Then they have a midday meal. All the astronauts are at the midday meal. And then they have their exercise time, and that's a lot of time. And then they have time for fun. They have time off. They've got a phone up there they like to play with. They can call cell phones on the ground with some phone they've rigged up. And mission control is nothing to do with it. They have movies to watch. They've got to have time for some fun. And the other thing they do is that they have different nationalities there. So they celebrate all the holidays of every nationality. And and one astronaut that spent the entire year on the station said that having that schedule really made a difference. And I think there's something we can learn from that. And there's really, really fun videos that kids can watch. Life on the International Space Station. Very tight quarters. They've got a toilet that's not very nice. And everybody has to get along. And they've got, there's something to be learned from that. And because this thing with the pandemic's hard. I mean, last 6 months in the US, people are getting really tired of getting, people getting grouchier and sick of it. We had some very nasty customers at our dentist's office just recently. That just shows how stressed out some people are getting.
Yeah, and Temple is right. The importance of routine, the importance of scheduling. Now, I too have been home for over a year, haven't flown or traveled anywhere, and that was an important part of my routine. Movement is also an important part of my routine. And when I came home and was essentially under lockdown, there was no more what I call incidental exercise for movement. So my day would start getting up in the morning. I'd get up at 7, Temple would get up at 7:30. I'd shower and then ride my bicycle to work. And then there'd be all the walking that you do at work to see other colleagues, have meetings, teach classes, and so on, and doing errands. All of that stopped. So I realized that I needed to be much more intentional in my movement. And I established a routine of using my elliptical bike every second day for 90 minutes. And I've been doing that every second day since the pandemic started. And so that's an example of making a schedule and keeping to it. And like with Temple, I take time for writing, catching up on email, teaching all of my courses online. Every single course and workshop that I've done and webinar, just like we're doing now, it's all been online. So we look forward to when it's safe to travel
Well,
again?
I've been on, I got my vaccinations and I've been on 2 airplane trips just very, very recently, but I went an entire year without flying. Very fun. I got to talk at a college and I got to visit a very interesting autism camp that I thought was really good, where the families stay in a cabin and they get the kids doing all kinds of things, riding horses, working in the garden. And one of the things that parents learn from this is that their child is capable of doing things. There's a tendency sometimes to over shield the child. 2 years ago, I went to another camp in another part of the US, and they were getting the children out on little boats. And the mom would go, "You got my son on a boat?" Yes, he got on a boat and he thought it was fun. This is, there's a tendency to overprotect. I'm seeing too many kids on the spectrum not learning basic skills. Things I learned when I was like 9 years old. I learned about, I had a little bit of cash money and I knew what I could buy with that. That was 50 cents back in the 50s. And I could buy 10 candy bars with it. But if I wanted a 69-cent toy airplane, I had to save for 2 weeks. Very important thing that I was learning. And I would go into shops and buy little things. And I'm seeing kids today, they might be doing well in school and they've never gone shopping. This is ridiculous.
Yes. I think these are very important insights which we are getting by listening to both of you. Thank you for that. And we live surrounded by the ocean. And I think our parents encourage our children with autism to go and swim and enjoy the ocean. I think overprotection is something that needs to be addressed. It's
So they might like, this is my new book for just all kids, The Outdoor Scientist. And one of the things I talk about in here is things I did on the beach. I would collect shells and make artwork out of them. My sister and I had rock collections, and we'd bust open rocks to see what they look like inside, and you got to wear safety goggles. But just all kinds of things we just did outside, and to get kids out doing things, all kids out doing things. Kids are not doing enough of just making up their own games. But I had we did a lot of stuff on the beaches when I was a child.
Yeah, that's right. People are spending way too much time inside. I mean, now that it's a pandemic, that's a little bit understandable. But when it becomes safe again, it's important to get all students off of screens and computer games and going outside, experiencing the physical world. That is so important. And the beach is certainly part of that. I spent much time on the beach as a young child. I also collected seashells, and I'd organize them and write their Latin names underneath them and gluing them into boxes for displays. So finding ways to explore the outside is very, very important.
Yes.
Well, kids just aren't doing enough of that. And I mean, yesterday I was talking to some ranchers that came to visit our campus, and their 7-year-old was fascinated when Dad was fixing a water pump. And the child was learning how it worked. It can be done safely. Actually, it was a an old-fashioned wind-operated water pump. And the kid was real interested in seeing how that worked. And then the other kid was out sitting with the cows out in the pasture.
So these were the questions which I had received. I have asked. Yes, and we have got.
Thank you, Dr. Nath. Thank you, Dr. Nath. I have some comments on the page, which I would like to share. There are some familiar names. Dr. Stephen, Dr. Temple, they have sent their wishes to both of you. I have names of Veronica Oriz from Peru.
Oh yes.
Alpana Zushi, Kulsuma Parvez, Juma Salim, Shazmun Nahar from UK, Sumitra Paul Bakshi from Kolkata, India. And I also have Brian Rodericks, who has commented on the question about the beach and swimming, that he has two kids on the spectrum, girl aged 13 and boy aged 11. Both the kids are in the Guinness Book of World Records for skating and also open deep sea swimmers. And he says that the lockdown has helped them to get independent in the kitchen, laundry, etc. And the pandemic has been a blessing for them. And he has emphasized that we should make children very, very independent in ADL, activities of daily living.
That's
And
right.
would like to have your advice or your comments on the same.
I totally agree with what you're saying. You know, use this time to learn a whole bunch of different skills. No, definitely.
Yes. And the more independent a person can be, the better off it is for them. So the more that they can take care of their own activities of daily living, whether it's hygiene, eating, making their bed, keeping their area clean, whatever it is, much better off everyone will be.
Sure. I also have a small comment that requires your inputs for sure, and that's from Juma Salim. Is there any new researches or recent findings about autism?
Well, there's a lot of research being done on autism. I don't know about all the research being done, but what I'm seeing, which is I find very encouraging, is increasing numbers of autistic people being involved, meaningfully involved in research. That's relatively new, and that is research that I've been working on. What can we do to engage in an authentic manner, going way beyond just being studied as a subject, going way beyond perhaps being asked to serve on an advisory board and maybe being asked questions, but involving autistic people in the design of, in the implementation of, analysis of research, dissemination of data, all aspects of research. Because if we're going to be studying about autism, we should be engaging autistic people to do this research. Those of us who are interested in doing so. So this is a very exciting turn that I see happening in research, new developments.
Well, one of the areas of research that I think would be some of the most important is working on ways to help reduce the sensory issues and treat the sensory issues. And there's a paper on the environmental enrichment is an effective treatment for autism. It's very simple. You know, when you do it mainly with children, you stimulate two senses at the same time, like maybe touch the carpet and then smell, aromatherapy. And you're always stimulating two senses at the same time, but you're also always changing the two senses you're stimulating. Always changing. And there's a lot of emphasis on touch and smell, balancing, something that, it's another thing. Simple things, 15 minutes twice a day. And I think how it works, and this is evidence-based, I think it desensitizes. It's a paper worth getting. I think there is a free version. If you look around, you can find the free version. It's a paper that I think ought to be translated. And it was set up as an experiment. So they give you an exact protocol, which you probably can change some, but the principle is stimulating, like vision and touch at the same time, for example, or vision and smell at the same time. Auditory, they used a record of classical music. You probably could use some other different music, but since it was an experiment, they had to standardize it. And the controls didn't get this treatment. And there were definite improvements in kids up to 10. It hasn't been tried in adults. Environmental enrichment, 3 keywords on Google: autism, environmental enrichment. You can find the paper.
it's really wonderful to hear those emphasis, those wonderful words about sensory and the kind of impact it has on the lives of children with autism, not just children, but also later on in the adulthood as well, like Dr. Temple said. In fact, for us and for our context in India, I'm sure that must be true for other parts of the world as well. Due to the pandemic, we have looked into and we have now successfully also kind of started doing teletherapy for the sensory integration aspects as well, which earlier used to be thought of as something that can be done only in a physical environment, only in a specialized setup. So, but for me, me and my entire team at Soch, we have now started doing a lot of work on sensory integration, post our trainings, specialized trainings in it, and a lot of parents, not just in India, but in the neighboring countries, in Bangladesh, in UK, and so many other countries have got in touch with us to have some strategies, some input that the parents can implement within their household with using the materials that they have around us. And especially also, it's wonderful for them to understand that how sensory is impacting their child in an individualized way, because
Right.
sensory can have a very different impact on each one of us. So we have now started doing a lot of online and teletherapy model of delivery for sensory integration as well. Yes, Dr. Stephen, your comment, please.
Yes, yes, that is very important. It has forced us to learn new ways of doing things. And there are some things that we can do very well online. There are some things that we can actually do better online than we can do face to face. And similarly, there are other things that we do face to face that we only can do face to face. However, that's not an option right now. Hopefully soon, face to face interaction will become safe again, and will be, I see the future as more of a hybrid, where we'll continue to do some things online because we've learned how to do them, and we'll do things face to face, and the two of them will supplement each other.
I think that's the amount of time we had today. It was a wonderful program. I think we had a lot of meaningful questions, very, very grounded to the lives of the children and parents in Maldives and here in India as well. So I would like to close the program. Thank you, Dr. Sample. Thank you, Dr. Stephen, one and million times for agreeing, taking our time out of your busy schedule.
Our pleasure.
If you would like to close the program, please.
Thank you for coming.
And yes, thank you for coming. It was a pleasure sharing our experiences with you. And we look forward to further collaboration and working together to make fulfilling and productive lives for autistic people the rule rather than the exception.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the inputs. It was really an enriching experience for all of us to listen to you and to learn from you. I also hope that we continue to interact and we keep the relationship going with the Maldives. Thank you.
Well, it was great to be here, and looks like you had people from all around the world that came to this.
That's great.
Yes.
Thank you so much again.
Thank
And
you.
with that, I close the.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Dr. Manish.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye.